What's going on, world? Welcome back to another episode of the Tech in Motion podcast. This is actually a special episode. At times, we are in the professional field, we're going across life, and we may experience either burnout or stress or other issues in the workforce and may not necessarily know how to deal with it. And a lot of times, we're not mentally healthy. So, I have a very special guest, Natalie Bryan. She is a licensed clinical social worker, therapist, five-time best-selling author. She owns the Restoring Harmony Counseling and Consulting practice and is the founder of E.A.R.L, which stands for Providing Education and Advocacy to Rebuilding Lives. And she is an individual that specializes, works with people like individuals, couples, families, groups. But I just want to bring her to the stage so we can talk a little bit about mental health. So without further ado, welcome to the Motion Podcast, Natalie Bryan. Welcome. So glad you're here.
Thank you for having me today. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we've known each other for a few years now. We've been in the same area, go to the same church. And most importantly, I've definitely valued your input into my teens' lives as I'm a teen pastor on the side, but also I have teen girls. And whenever Natalie is in the vicinity, they're always picking your brain and always trying to get some insights into how to manage their mental health. So just wanted to introduce you to the audience and just give you the floor to tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you into your current career field.
Hey, so again, all the wonderful things that you've said. I have been in the health and human service, just the service of people for over 25 years. I am a people person and I have found my passion in helping others through social work. I got my degree in New York and I have been in the Georgia area, the Augusta, Georgia area for the last 9 years. It is my passion to help not just the individual, but our community when it comes to mental wellness and other social and emotional issues that people are facing today. I just love what I do because I love people.
Awesome. Yeah, and I specialize in the cybersecurity field, and we work a lot with technology, a lot with environments where it could be fast paced. It could
Mhm.
be a lot of stressors, people that work in security operations centers where they're monitoring network environments, or they're in these positions of authority and
Mhm.
they're being held accountable for certain things that are happening in an organization. Sometimes there just isn't a lot of awareness around what resources are out there, what's available, and then how to manage some of those stressors. I wanted to ask a couple of questions that came to mind as I look at some things within the cybersecurity field. And I know you've had some experience with some clients, and I just wanted to get your insights into it. So let's go ahead and start off with a couple of questions. So,
Yeah.
given and leadership development, so what are the unique stressors that you think cybersecurity professionals face compared to other high pressure industries?
Well, first and foremost, it's an intensity. Right now, our cybersecurity forces are dealing with a lot of unknowns and figuring out how to protect not just the individual, but our nation when it comes to hacking, identity theft, and all those other things. So, our cybersecurity professionals are absolutely needed because every single day there's a new thing, a new breach, a new issue, and they are the problem solvers and protectors of this industry that we can't physically see but impacts our everyday life in every aspect, whether it's banking or even education. So it really is important for you guys to be on point. However, you guys face a lot of stress. You guys work long hours at times. You guys are kind of isolated. There's no real socialization, and you guys face things of your own, your personal stuff, job insecurity, imposter syndrome, not feeling like you deserve to be in the room because there are a lot of unknown factors in the field. Also, sometimes because you guys are coping with all of that, there's a lot of prescription drug use, there's a lot of suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation. People don't realize that when you go 3 days without sleep, it really slips you into psychosis. So if you're on a task or a job that takes you days and days and days, and you're on very little sleep and your stress levels are high, given the right circumstance, the right situation, and the right time, you can really find yourself in a problematic situation.
Yeah, you bring up a great point about just some of those instances where people could be in an environment or been in a scenario where they're having to work long hours, extended hours. So some of the people that have been following me a while and been following the podcast a while know that I started off in IT services management when I was in the Army. And I didn't always focus on cybersecurity, but some of these same things happened in the IT space. I remember being when I was in the Army, being in the field and being in certain deployment environments where, again, it's high stakes. It is I'm trying to get all of these systems up, configured, up and operational in a remote and austere environment. And if there's an issue, they're looking at me. They're like, "Hey, Chief, what are we doing to fix this? How are we getting our system back up? How are we getting back connected?" And there were times where there was a particular issue, and I'm spending hours. I'm running through, going through logs and configurations, all these things, and I got multiple people working. I'm on the phone with certain people to specialists that are trying to help me get through it. And it's like I get to the point where like you've been going 12, 15, 18, 20, 24 hours, even beyond, and you're just not getting any sort of mental clarity. And what I found, I was like, hey, look, I'm just going to go and take maybe a couple hours of a nap and just kind of reset and get some
Reset.
rest so that I can come back and be more clear headed. And sure enough, I remember one particular instance, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go take a shower, go get a nap, and then I'm gonna come back. And then sure enough, on my way, I was like, oh, I know what it is.
Hmm.
Went right in and handled it. And so again, I thought it was an excellent point that just the awareness that we need to have as professionals with the fact that sleep is not just something that is a luxury. It's a necessity,
Necessity.
especially when you're in these high stakes environments where it's high stress and you need your mental capacities in order to be able to solve problems. So I thought that was an excellent point that you made there.
Absolutely. It's so important. Sleep hygiene is so important. It's a whole industry. Recently I saw that people are taking travel vacations just to sleep, for rest. It is that
Wow.
important.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you recognize that, because sometimes we are so exhausted mentally that we
Mhm.
can't even see the forest for the trees. We can't see the simple answer right in front of us. Or it may not even be simple, but we can't put our skill set to use because we're so
Right.
drained.
Right. Yeah. And it's the mindset and the perspective around mental health. And this is our brains that we're talking about, and our brains are a
Mhm,
muscle. And so, just like when our muscles are fatigued, Army, we did PT tests and we
mhm,
had to do a certain number of push ups in 2 minutes, certain number of sit ups in 2 minutes. And once you're working your muscles out repeatedly and over again, that one activity, it might have been easy the first 10, 15, 20 reps, but then after you get into 70s and 80, reps,
mhm.
your muscles are going to get fatigued in that same movement. But we don't always think of our minds as muscles, to where if our minds aren't getting the rest and we're working our minds and our brains in order to solve problems, then there comes a point where our brain really needs a rest in order to recuperate, because those same activities become a lot harder and we won't have the same level of clarity and insight in order to be able to solve those problems in a reasonable amount of time without resetting and recuperating our brains.
Absolutely. I totally agree. It is so important.
Okay, so wanted to transition because a lot of times you could feel like, and you mentioned having to take a vacation in order to
Mhm,
get some rest.
mhm,
And when we're working for organizations, or even when even if you're a business owner
mhm,
and you need that break, sometimes if you either have, as a business owner, you have clients that you have to support, or if you're working for a business and you're a cybersecurity professional, IT professional, and you have to actually ask for permission to get breaks, to get
mhm.
leave, paid time off, or if you need just you're just not where you need to be and you know you need to break away. What
Mhm.
role do you think organizations should play in addressing like mental health needs of their cybersecurity teams and IT teams?
I think a lot more education around mental health and mental wellness is going to be very important, providing environments that promote a culture of mental wellness. Some places have those nap or rest areas or those
Mhm.
quiet areas where people can meditate, pray, or do yoga. Or an environment where they have a gym and they may have to, some people need physical exertion to get clarity and things of that nature. So, promoting an environment that, hey, if right now is not the time that you can go take a leave in the middle of this, but here's a space that, hey, if it's a bit too much, there's a rest place, there's a rest space. Also, giving people mental health days. Like if they need to take a mental health day, offering them. I know some companies offer 1 or 2 days a year that is just a mental wellness day that they can take that day off,
Oh,
just like a sick
wow.
day, and it just focuses on them getting a break from that job or environment. Definitely promoting that people utilize their PTO and their vacation time and really go and take a rest and reset. That's important. And I think another thing is appropriate boundaries. I was saying to someone back in the day when we had our homes, after 6 o'clock, there's no work. People didn't call you after 6 p.m. You were having dinner with
Right.
your family. On the weekends, that was dedicated to your family. So evening and weekends, you had that time to kind of rest and reset. Today, people want access 24/7 to you. You're getting emails at 2 in the morning, phone calls at this time. On Saturdays and Sundays, you're putting in documents and you're working. Sometimes you have to be firm about your boundaries and saying no. Even if you don't want to put your outbox message like, hey, I'm out of the office at this time, be back first thing in the morning, we'll review, whatever. If you're not a person who's very confrontational about setting those boundaries, but definitely making sure those appropriate boundaries are in place. Now, I know there will be moments where there are crises that you need to
Yeah.
address, but your life should not be overrun and consistently be in crisis mode all the time.
But yeah, you brought up another gem in the sense that it's hard for us in this current environment to be able to really set a good, clear boundary when it comes
Mhm,
to our work-life balance and then where work ends and where our personal lives begin,
mhm,
especially since COVID. And now there's a high prevalence and high opportunities for being able to do remote work. The benefit is I don't have to waste my gas to drive
mhm,
into the office. I don't have to get dressed from the waist down. I can work in a comfortable home environment, just roll out of bed
mhm.
and then be at work. However, it becomes even more challenging in those senses where you can actually disconnect from work because your work environment is your home environment. So like you're
Yes,
working and those hours where it was a hard stop when you had to go to the office, like it's 5 o'clock, time to punch out.
time
I
to
need to
go
get in
home.
my car. I need to fight that traffic back home. And then now I'm at home, right? It's
Yes,
not work. But now work environment and the home environment is the same thing.
same
And it,
place.
it becomes harder for people. And I found myself, my first civilian job leaving the Army, I was working and it was a remote work environment. And it was great in the sense that it gave the flexibility, but also it was a high intensity, high-paced environment, and there was a lot going on, and we were short-staffed, and I was the lead for my department. And so
Mhm,
I remember one meeting, and I was actually the beauty of being able to do remote work. You can work from anywhere. So I was
mhm,
actually like supposed to be on vac with my wife in Las Vegas. And I was like,
mhm,
okay, I'll just work during the day. And
mhm,
then in the afternoons and evenings, I'll get to have fun in Vegas. And so I remember I was in one meeting, and this is after I'd been working 16, 18, 20-hour days consistently because, again, we were short staffed and it was a high paced environment. And so I remember sitting in a meeting and I just got so angry in this meeting, which is not anybody knows me. I'm pretty even keeled. It takes a lot to get me really riled up. And
mhm,
I remember just like my company was supposed to support me on something. Like we literally talked about it before the meeting, like, hey, This is what they're probably going to talk about. What is going to be our narrative to respond to this? And they're like, oh, yeah, like, what do you think we should do, Will? Like, hey, I think we should do X, Y. Oh, that makes a whole lot of sense. We will support you. And then we get in the meeting with the client, and then the client asks for something, and then they're like, oh, yeah, we think Will's team can do that. I'm like, what did we just talk about? We just talked about this. We are understaffed, overworked. We don't have any room for additional work. And now you're just adding 3 more hours of work per day per person in my team. I'm
Mhm.
like, and I was as tactful as I could have been, but I was visibly upset.
Yeah.
And so much to the point where one of the people that was on my team sent me a text message like, "Hey man, are you good?" It's like, do you need me to get you? I got some other connections for another job out there. I can hook you up if this like if you're done with this. Like I was like, and and then fast forward, I had a meeting with the leadership for the company. After I was like, look, that was uncharacteristic of me
Mhm.
to be able to show that level of being upset and like really not being a team player at that point.
Mhm.
That was had a tactful way of putting things that was a little bit more receptive. But
Yeah.
ultimately, look, I need to take a couple of days
Mhm.
and just kind of disconnect, reset, and
Mhm.
figure out if this is the type of environment that I want to be
I
in.
wanna work
Because
in
right now, if you ask me right now, I will be done.
today.
And I don't want to make that decision because I'm mentally drained and upset, and I don't want to make a rash decision. So they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, no, please take your time and just get back with us, and we'll be in touch." And I was like, "Yes, all right, cool. I'll catch you guys next week." But yeah, it's just sometimes it is key and crucial to be able to have that
Takes
time away.
And
And
setting the boundary, that's the
yeah,
hard part for a lot of people, especially work from home. I remember during COVID constantly talking to people about separating your office from your work environment. If you
right.
can, don't put your work environment in your bedroom if that is an
Mhm.
option. If it is in your bedroom, try to separate it in some place that you can close off or cover, like a closet or whatever, so that you can close that door at the end of the day and not
Right.
have to look at that computer, look at that laptop, look at that workspace or whatever. But I also told people to define their workspace, like wherever they decided to set up, let it be set up like an office workspace so that
Okay. Yeah.
when they walked into that room, their mode was go on work. But when the day was over and they closed that closet door or bedroom door or room or whatever, work was done for the day. Even if it meant setting reminders for themselves. Because, with work from home, you're at home. You're like, hey, I can slide and get a snack. Hey, I can do this. I could do that. Yeah, that's great. But sometimes you're so into it, so intense, the whole day has gone by. You haven't eaten, you haven't
Mhm.
stepped away from the computer, you're mentally drained. So it is important. Like sometimes we have to remind ourselves. So, what I did during COVID, and sometimes people use it now to help reduce their anxiety, I'm like, hey, set a schedule for your day, set your calendar up for the day. Even if at the time so many people were out of work, I was like, even if it's 8 o'clock, shower. 9:30 get coffee, 10 o'clock walk around the block because they were not
Mhm.
working at the time. Do that also. Usually when you work from home, you still have a calendar, but definitely put in that calendar a 15-minute break 2 times a day, an hour break for lunch. Walk away from the computer, shut it all down. Don't answer any messages or phone call until you're after off break. At the end of the day, set an alarm that, hey, give yourself a curse of 15 minutes to try and wrap some things up, but try not to push past 30 minutes after you're supposed to be off doing work if you can. So, really trying to iron out some boundaries can be helpful. Now, I know in the tech industry, it can be a lot more difficult because you guys run projects as opposed to end of the day circumstance. But even in that, you have to figure out, okay, when is my mental energy done for the day? Because at the end of the day, if you cannot think past a certain point, why are we here? Because
Right.
it's your
Right.
mind that's needed to be creative enough to put these things in place to help us. If you already feel the mental fatigue and you're ready to tap out, then I would say tap out. And definitely have an idea of what that looks like per day. So you can say, okay, I know that I was looking at something yesterday, and this lady said that her husband gave her kind of a 3-in-1 workday. So, like from I think 6 to 12, that's where most of your creative juices are flowing, and you're kind of like really buzzing and high. Put all of that heavy stuff in that 6 to 12 window. In that 12 to 4 or 5 window, you're definitely getting it in, definitely separating and really in it, typing, inputting, doing all those things, streamlining those creative, free flowing thoughts into this intentional work. And then from that kind of in that evening time, resetting for the next day, but also documenting the things that resonated throughout the day, like changes that you can adjust and make so that tomorrow can be a better, more productive day, running that 3-in-1 day method. I don't have the exact ramifications, but when she said it, I said, that is really ideal because that's true. Some people are morning people. So in the morning time,
Mhm.
it is. If you're not putting a really hard stringent I got to do this, and this, you're free flowing, your brain juices are going, you can be a little bit more creative. You can come up with different ideas, things to bring to the table. That way, hey, coming post lunch, hey, these are some things that I thought about this morning that I think would be helpful. It seemed to be really a creative way to have time management for how you're effectual. Now, some people are not morning people. I am an afternoon person. My thing is like post 11 o'clock, you're getting the best Natalie. So you have to know yourself. So you have to do an audit of yourself. Some people are night people. When I was younger, I could stay up all night, and that was my peak time. So you have to know when your peak mental time is. And when that is, capture that moment of creativity and productivity and work your day around that.
Yeah, I think that what helped me a lot was implementing a schedule. Like with the military, a lot of things are pretty rigid, and you have your set times that you do certain things. I found there was less structure when I do more consulting, and it's
Mhm,
more sporadic project based type of stuff. When I was working with one of my companies I was working with, it was just like, hey, you got 20, 30 different clients, you give them a couple hours a month, and then you basically coordinate with them when you want to work. But then what I was finding was like I wasn't having time to do some other things outside of a scheduled meeting with that client. I wasn't getting that done. It's like I got a schedule. I can just and what happens was with that company, if you have free space on your time, the
mhm.
sales team would then book a meeting in there, and so it would be time that I wanted to use before my next meeting to prep
Yeah,
for that meeting.
yeah.
But then that time got booked for a different meeting that had
A
nothing to do
different
with
meaning.
that.
Mhm,
And I found like meetings were just stacking all up on top of each other. And I
mhm.
wasn't even able to transition my mind from one client to the next. I'm mixing up like, hey, what did we talk about last time? And then
Yeah,
what were we doing again? And so what I found was I had to schedule in breaks in between or
right.
spaces in
Yeah.
between each one of those events. Or if I wanted to do project work, even though it wasn't hard set, like I'm working with a client, I'm in a meeting, I still needed to put that on the calendar so that it protected my time, so that I could be creative, so that I could be productive and prep for additional meetings. So I found that helped me a lot.
Mhm.
That again, having that structure to my schedule, and then again, I thought it was uh, amazing that you brought out just knowing yourself and auditing what works for you. Some people are morning people, some people work better late at night. I know I get to a point where sometimes I can work good at night. And one of the things that I did when I was in the Army, because I was in a leadership position and I was in a position that people needed my input on a lot of things, I would set my
Mhm,
schedule and
mhm.
all the things I wanted to accomplish. But then I would get, hey, Chief, hey, Mr. Reed. And then the whole day is spent like putting out these fires, answering these
Yeah.
questions, responding to these random asks of my time.
Mhm,
And what I
mhm,
would do is I would come in an extra hour or two early. And
mhm.
then I would stay an extra hour later after, like when everything was quiet and everybody went home, and I was able to just re-engage on all the things that I wanted to do and have that be my time. But I know like now late at night, again, it's that magic little spot between, hey, like now things are quiet, the kids are asleep. I can
Yeah.
work on some things, but then it gets to the point where, like you said, you like, man, I just read this 3 times and I still did not process any
Still
of that.
didn't get it.
So it's
Yes, not
probably
true.
time to go ahead and lay it down, Will, and
Yes.
pick this back up in the morning. So yeah, some great insights and I think lots of practical application on how we can exercise some of these things in the workforce. So definitely appreciate that.
I will say this, a lot of times people think with mental wellness, yes, we give coping skills and tools and stuff like, but these are things that we always know to do,
Hmm.
but
Yep.
we don't do them because they seem too simplistic to do. And it is some of those base simplistic things or ideas or tools that help us to reset and get back to a better mentally wealthy space. Sometimes, yes, there are some complicated things, but for the most
Mhm.
part, it is reminding you of the things that you usually do. Think about it.
Right.
Setting boundaries start off with just saying no. You learned no very early. So it really is just re-implementing the things we know to do and not selling ourselves short. And that's easier said than done
Right.
sometimes.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes we have problems saying no and really putting things on a calendar and a schedule, even if it's just, I had to put my lunchtime on my account as booked. Okay, I'm
Mhm.
busy. Yes, I'm busy
Yes.
eating and I'm busy. That's my way of, again, that's my break. So I
Mhm.
remember like before I was like, I work from home, I can take a meeting and then I'll push my lunch back or whatever. So when I didn't book that time, it got booked over, or I would be on a different thing and it would run over and then it'd be 2, 3 o'clock. I'm like, man, I didn't eat. My stomach is
Mhm.
growling in a meeting. And they're like, hey, is there thunder going on? Just my stomach. I didn't eat lunch. But we have to take those moments where we're clear and we're not in these high stress, high demand environments, or we're not feeling the pressure of somebody asking, hey, can you do this for me real quick? It's going to take a couple of hours. And I can really look at my calendar like, no, I'm sorry, I'm booked today. I'm booked just for lunch and my own creative time, because a lot of what we do is research as well. And so
Yeah.
if you're not keeping up with the latest technologies, the latest threats that are out there, the latest regulations and changes that are out, then you're going to get left behind, or you're going to put the clients in a bad position because they're operating on not the latest information, or
Mhm.
you're not as informed as you need be, and something might go unnoticed or unaddressed. So that was my like I had to build in time. Okay, that is research time. I'm sorry, I am busy. It's on my calendar. You see,
Yes.
I don't have any white space. So I'm sorry, you're gonna have to go and ask somebody else to help you with that, unless you want me to wait and like, hey, I can address this 2 weeks from now where I got some space to do this. So I think just establishing some clear boundaries, but it's hard to have that conversation. It was like, well, I'm looking at your calendar. It says you're free. And now you have to go
Mm.
and try to like, and then it becomes a lot harder to maintain that boundary when it's not built into your schedule.
It really is difficult. And that's why I tell people like today time is moving so fast that if
Mhm.
you don't prioritize time for even self, you'll miss it. And
Yeah.
so it is important to schedule that time, even if maybe you know how when people are on a diet and they have to log their food,
Yeah.
maybe for a week or two, do a time log and see where your time is being spent, where it can be recaptured, if it's just being wasted, or seeing where you're doing too much and there needs to be a cutoff point. I think that is something that could be really important.
Yeah. I found it hard to cut off in remote environments, but it was really easy in the army. If I was coming
Mhm.
home, my signal to myself was immediately taking my uniform off when I got home.
Yeah.
That was like up, I know, because I had been in a leadership position, being in charge, like you're the manager of multiple other soldiers. I had to supervise them and guide them and correct them. And sometimes my wife would say, I come home and she was like, hey, we be talking, we be in a a heated discussion. And she'd be like, I'm not one of your soldiers. You can't talk to me like I'm one of your soldiers. Like I'm your
There it
wife. I'm
goes.
like, and I wouldn't even catch myself doing it,
Hmm.
but it's because I was like, do not bring work home. Do
Yeah.
not bring that same type of interaction to your family, your wife. And so I had to really, because again, you just get home, you just want to sit down and,
Mm.
but I was like, I had to take the uniform off.
Yes.
You are no longer Chief Reed. You are now dad. You are now husband. And then that puts me in a better state. But yeah, again, it's just, I think when you were bringing up those points about just having a clear, even if you're in a work remote environment, having some clear an office space and then
Hmm.
having that set up like it's an office. And, if
Yeah.
you can put it behind a closed door to where now, okay, I know I'm going to
Hmm.
then leave the office space and now I'm home and
Yeah.
now I'm home version of me, not work version of me.
Mhm. And there are people who have smaller spaces that may not have a separate room. I told them then, hey, you don't have a separate room, but put it completely opposite from your bed and put up a curtain or one of those room dividers, as
Yeah.
long as it's a space where you can't visually see it. Because sometimes, even though we'd be like, well, I can just get up and do such and such and such, worse, they bring the laptop into the bed. And
Yeah.
that's even worse. So my thing is setting those hard boundaries, even in spaces where you may not feel like you have them. That's going to be the key to winning. It really is. It's going to be the key to winning. As difficult as it may seem, those are going to be the things that'll help.
Yeah. And so what I just thought of is when you have the convenience of being able to access work environment from your laptop, you can do that very, okay, it's just right there. Let me grab my
Mhm.
work laptop. I just log in and then knock this out real quick. Now, the question I want to ask myself is if I had to go into the office, is this something that's worth me leaving home to go to the office to do? If the answer is no, then it can wait.
It can. It
So,
can.
yeah, unless it's an emergency, again, this is
Hmm.
where I think organizations
Hmm.
can get like emergencies, there are crisis, instant responders, those types of jobs, SOCs, active threat that's in the environment, active indicator of compromise, all that needs to be addressed. That's one thing. But it's another thing as a leader, and this is where, like, even in the Army, when we introduced cell phones, and
Hmm.
before it was anything that had to happen at work or needed to be work related was discussed during work hours. And
Yes.
they did not address you really unless it was some sort of emergency, but they literally had to come drive to your place or call you they had to call your house phone or something like that. We bring cell phones and okay, you're always, and so things that should have happened at work, they don't happen. Or, oh, I just send you a text later on. And then this is what needs to happen. I'm not at work anymore. And
Yep.
so some organizations, some bosses, managers may be like, oh, well, you work from home. Your laptop's right there. You have the company app on your phone. You should be able to just knock this out real quick. I know it's 9 o'clock p.m.
Mhm.
and you should be at home, sleep, eating dinner, whatever it is that you do at that time. It's your own personal time. But that boundary of, hey, I know we have technology and I know we are technically connected, but there's a difference between connection and then a violation of a boundary because now we
Mhm.
are outside of the scope of an emergency. Now we're just
Yeah.
using the convenience of technology to facilitate a bad
To
habit.
give something exactly. I can see if it's like, hey, I know it's late, but I want to get this off to you for tomorrow, whatever. Don't even respond to this evening. I just wanted to make sure you had it for the morning. That's fine. But when they're wanting you to do work on your time and stuff, it's hard. And they know that it's hard when it's everything is so convenient. But that's the problem. Accessibility to you has to be minimized in a way. I know that sometimes the culture is 24/7, but because technology doesn't sleep. However, we are still human. We need sleep. We have to be mindful of that. And I think sometimes the higher up in organizations, the less they recognize the humanity of the manpower. But that's what it is, manpower. So that means that there are limitations to man. You have to kind of balance that out.
Yeah, and I think that so a lots of people get into cybersecurity and IT because they have a natural desire to help. They have a
Mm-hmm.
natural desire to want to configure technology in a way for a
Mm-hmm.
business to be able to do what they need to do. Like users have issues from an IT perspective, my computer's not working. I got a lot of satisfaction from solving problems and
Mm-hmm.
being a problem solver. Whenever there's a problem, it sits in your head until you can actually
Mm-hmm.
get it resolved, and that'll just cause to work longer than is healthy
Mm-hmm.
for you, especially for an extended amount of time. Because again, you're just not getting that break. It isn't the company even asking you to do it, but just the natural desire of the people that are in this type of work.
Yeah.
They want to help, they want to solve this problem, and they want to solve it as quickly as possible. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of work that needs to be done. Hey, I need to get this. There's not enough time in the day. Hey, let me just take my laptop home. Hey, let me just work these hours. There's value in hard work. There's value in not leaving a job undone. But there's also value in being able to have the appropriate amount of maintenance for yourself from a
Mm-hmm.
mental health perspective in order to remain optimal when you're actually supposed to be working.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So want to transition into another, just something that you brought up. You mentioned there being a mental health day that some organizations are implementing in their
Mm-hmm.
organizations. And so can you talk a little bit more about that? Is that something that I didn't even know that was really a thing until
Mm-hmm.
recently? And that might be something that when you're applying for a job and we're talking about benefits and 401k
Mm-hmm.
plans and hey, this is my PTO, is this something that should be asked? Is this something that is common in
Absolutely. You can talk.
organizations?
Most organizations now, especially post COVID, when there has been such a deterioration of mental health, a lot of organizations added into their benefits mental health days, especially in a lot of tech companies. I see this young lady on TikTok and Instagram, and she's always talking about tech jobs. And the thing she goes over is benefits. And a lot of times you'll see in their benefits unlimited PTO, mental
Hmm.
health days, educational grants, da, 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 da. So a lot more organizations are adding in the mental health days. It may be one or two, but that's still one or two extra days that you get for yourself. And if you wake up one morning and you're just not feeling it, and you're like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed, maybe burnt out, I just need a day. Utilize the day. Go out, do something fun. A lot of times we go into jobs and positions that we are passionate about, but doing something sometimes over and over and over again, or the weight of the powers that be may change our desire and passion for it, and it becomes monotonous, and it turns
Yeah.
from passion to burden to work. And so taking some time to rekindle passion about other areas, art or music or dance or whatever, may give us that recalibration to be able to come back and do what we need to do.
I love that. That is so good. I think that having something like that and awareness that that could be something that even if an organization does not advertise, because most time they're talking about, like, hey, we have health, we got dental, we got
Mhm,
vision,
mhm,
401k, and it might be something to where just job seekers just don't know to ask for it, and
mhm,
they may not get that benefit or may not know that it's available to them, and then
mhm,
they're not able to take advantage of this, which again it goes back to awareness around what resources are available to us and
mhm.
how we can best introduce self-care into our
Ex
workspaces,
mhm,
and self-care that is provided by an
absolutely.
organization because they value us as individuals. I don't believe that most organizations are, when given the choice of burning their workers out, although like when Elon Musk took over Twitter and he was like, look, we're going to be burning the candle on both ends. If you're not willing to work like 90, 100 hours all
Mhm,
excessive amounts of work during this time, then we're going to go ahead and give you your exit papers and you can go ahead and not be part of this organization. That's
mhm,
one thing to where, okay, we're telling you we're intentionally going to drain every bit of waking hours that you have available. But I think most organizations, when given the choice to be
mhm,
able to have some reduced turnover because again,
Yeah.
like if I'm stressed and then I experience some crisis at home and I can't actively address that, or I don't have the space to be able to reset, to be able to come back in and be optimal again, those types of experiences cause you to want to like, hey, I need to go find a different line of work, a different
Yeah.
employer. I need to go start my own business so I can maintain my own schedule and tell myself yes. So I think organizations, when given the choice to be able to provide these types of benefits and have it be readily accessible and aware to their employee environment, I think that would be in their benefit. So I think that I want the goal would be to normalize this type of a day or days that can be taken advantage of. But more importantly, that mental health, mental wellness should be a priority in the organization, just the bottom line KPIs and revenue goals and all of that. I think all of that is important. But without the people that make those certain things happen, you're going to be less likely to be able to sustain those types of benefits and the actual fruits of the labor that the organization is putting forth.
I agree. And I think you said a lot of key things, especially about self care. Self care is really important. That is, of course, taking time for yourself. A lot of times people think self care is massage and all the things. Self care is also diet. Self care is also looking over finances. Self care are the tough things as well as the easy things that help to make your life better in a more positive light. I think that is ideal. Also, a lot of organizations do offer benefits that help. For example, counseling. A lot of organizations have an employee assistance program that offers free counseling to their employees. A
Yeah,
lot of times, employees don't know that, and so they don't take advantage of that. That's
yeah,
really good. A therapy appointment can run you 100, 150, $200 for a session depending on
yeah.
who you are in sessions with. If you're doing couples or family, it could be double or triple that, depending on the number of people. So, recognizing that you have these benefits at your fingertips, like an EAP program that gives you counseling, possible medication management through your health insurance, they're just, you need to know what's offered to you by the organization. Is it a culture that is about balance and mental wellness? And if there is a need that you need to take a step back or whatever, are they supportive and recognizing that as humans, we have limitations sometimes?
Again, if
Mhm,
this it does no good to have $1 million in your bank account that you don't know you have access to it. You don't have
mhm,
a debit card, the login information. So you don't get the benefit of that money that is actually yours if you don't know about it. Yeah, I think that's one thing that in addition to all the pay and all of that, when
mhm,
people are looking at these job opportunities, look and see if there's an employee assistance program, EAP, that is out
mhm,
there that can provide that type of support. Because again, if it's a free benefit or a complimentary benefit that comes with the work, why not take advantage of it? I
mhm.
think that again, awareness is super key. So last question I have for you is, what can organizations do to empower their leaders to be more aware of these signs of burnout or struggles with mental health within their teams and then their organizations and departments?
And definitely educate it, but not just educate and do these super huge or even self progressive. No, have really interactive conversations with your layers of people from laity all the way up to the higher ups, because sometimes when you're far removed from a situation or circumstance, it's hard to put in an intervention that's going to be helpful. But I think if you're getting input from all levels about what type of pressures they're under, you can then put together a plan that could be effective for the organization. So, educating on burnout, talking to leadership about what that looks like in their people, recognizing when sometimes you have to tell people to take a step back or take some time off or step away, because sometimes, like you said, people really may want to either one just get it done, or they're really passionate about trying to execute, that they're not looking at their own self-care and they're missing the fact that they are now a liability instead of a benefit. And so that's really important for leaders to be able to identify and rectify while working in an organization. So, educating about mental wellness, looking at burnout, trying to put some interventions to help reduce stress, putting in or talking more about their employee assistant programs, that therapy is not their specialty, yoga is not their specialty, or whatever they need is not their specialty. But in that EAP service, the specialties are there to utilize that, encourage them to do that. So I think those are some things that can be really helpful.
Excellent. So one term that might resonate with security professionals is indicators of compromise. And so
Mm-hmm.
and when you're monitoring a network, you see something's off, something's wrong. Okay, you'll get an alert, notification, or you just see, okay, something's accessing memory that shouldn't be accessing memory. We got an unknown
Mm-hmm.
program, unknown file being accessed, files being downloaded. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think this is what we're talking about is indicators of burnout. Right. And so
Absolutely.
how do we educate our staff? And the way we educate our staff for indicators of compromise is security awareness training. So now it's
Mm-hmm.
mental awareness training, right? Mental health awareness training that should be involved in the organization, pushed down, and it should be something that we get the tone at the top that
Mm-hmm.
it is actually a priority for the organization, and then
Yeah.
that then trickles down to all the leadership. So that now that everybody is aware that it's a priority, everybody is aware of what those indicators of burnout could be. Now we're
Mm-hmm.
more informed on how to appropriately identify when somebody it needs to take like, hey, Will, go ahead and take 15 minutes,
Take
man,
some
and
time off. Yeah.
reset
And
like, hey.
the thing about it is, I think a lot of times organizations and people don't always necessarily know when they're in burnout, because burnout is a slow burn. You know what I'm saying? It
That part.
is like, okay, I'm doing a couple of hours over just a little bit. But when you start stacking those hours up over time, then it is not just the mental fatigue, then it's the physical fatigue, then it's the not sleeping, then it's the eating too much or eating not enough, then it's the irritability and the anger, then it's the anxiety about not producing. And it just begins to scaffold and just become an insurmountable mountain. And that's why taking these breaks and these moments for self, that's why it's so important, so that you don't end up in a situation where a molehill becomes a mountain.
That's so insightful. Things will definitely stack up on you, and you don't necessarily see it until it's too late, and it's now a crisis, right? Something that could have been just a small leak or something that we could have just done a quick 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day now is going to
Mhm.
take. We lost somebody because they just could not handle it. We've destroyed a project because we weren't able to manage our stakeholder resources appropriately. But so I think that again, like things will stack up on you if you don't address them in a timely manner. Excellent point. So we always end things up with a very loose question. So I want you to take off your therapist hat.
Therapist hat is away.
All right. So we're just talking about Natalie. So I'm a Marvel fan. So I like
Mhm.
superheroes, that type of deal. And a superpower that is common that you see out there in these comic book worlds is the ability to read minds. Right.
Yes.
So would that be a special power that you would want?
No.
Mhm.
No, I don't want to read everybody's mind. And you know what? I think this is a residual of the therapist hat, because people tell me all their stuff anyway. So I don't want to read minds. I think it's a cool gift. I do. But I think if I had to choose a superpower, it would not be reading minds. It would probably be something like flying.
So you can fly far, far
Yes.
away.
Far, far away. I think it would be something more like flying, or maybe even seeing through walls. That
Ooh.
might be cool. But yeah, reading minds, no, because I feel like even as a clinician, we take on people's things. We see our own clinicians because we want to make
Mhm.
sure we're in a healthy space.
Yeah.
But I think in reading people's mind and knowing those intimate things, that's a different level of burden that I don't feel like I would want. So, nah, I want to fly or look through walls and maybe even have superhuman strength, but not that one.
Okay, fair enough. So where can people go to find out more about you, connect with you? What type of resources do you have out there that people can come and
Oh,
connect with you?
yes. So I have a LinkedIn page, an Instagram page, Natalie Bryan, LCSW. Restoring Harmony Counseling Consulting is my practice. You can reach us at 762-383-0033. Pearl is my organization, my nonprofit. You can reach us at www.wearepearl.org. You can find me on Facebook, Natalie Bryan, Restoring Harmony, or Pearl's page. And I'm all around. I'm usually in the community doing something. So if you say, "Hey, do you know Natalie?" Usually somebody will say, "Yes, I know Natalie," and they'll point you in the right direction.
Awesome. And I can vouch for it. That Natalie is a person in the community, always doing something. She's spoken and provided some training to our teens at church. She's also very generous. She has a scholarship that she does every year as well to a couple that are involved in our ministry. So she's definitely super busy, super transparent, and very involved in the community. So again, appreciate everything that you do. Thank you for all the gems that you dropped and helping
Thank
us better put in perspective what we need to do to exercise better mental health in the cybersecurity and IT field. Any last parting words?
you. Just, I tell people to allow themselves grace. Everyone makes mistakes and you can come back from it. So just allow yourself some grace, regroup, and come back.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Appreciate you, Natalie. That is
Thank
it for this episode of the Tech and Motion podcast. And as always, go out there, be safe, and be a blessing wherever you are. Have a good one.
you.